discussing before the session, while we were waiting in the lounge, that gaming is perhaps something that has become completely pervasive in our lives. I don't know about all of you, but the moment I get up, I just get this absolute urge to pick up this instrument and do something with this instrument. What will 5G do with this? What will cloud gaming bring in our lives? To discuss this and join my two experts, please welcome Rashim Kapoor from Airtel and Anuj Agrawal from Radian Arc.
And without too much ado, I will start with you, Anuj. Let's start looking at the positive drivers for cloud gaming. The impact that cloud gaming will have on the industry is absolutely undeniable. India already has the second highest number of gamers after China. So in terms of the experience that you've seen in more developed markets, where there's, let's say, more reliable infrastructure, what predictions can you make about cloud gaming in India? How do you see, I mean, if you had a crystal ball, how do you see cloud gaming 2 years from now?
Thank you, Vivek. Interestingly, what we are seeing now with the cloud gaming, it will develop a new set of markets. So let me give you an idea how this whole gaming industry will look at it. So they are hardcore gamers, they are mid-core gamers, and they are casual gamers. Hardcore gamers are the one who essentially basically make their day around their gaming session. Mid-core gamers are the one who basically make their gaming sessions around their daily activities. And the casual one is just basically whenever they find time, they play the games. Bulk of the people, what we see right now are essentially into the casual gamers, and then there is a one hardcore gamers. The mid-core gamers are currently non-existent. And that's a market we think which would eventually develop with the cloud gaming. And let me give you an example how a typical cloud gamer looks like. These are people from 25 to 40 plus who wants to play high-end graphic games, but don't want to spend money on consoles because they think it's a dead investment, because you end up buying a console, then you end up spending, let's say, 2,500 rupees to buy a game, and that only you're stuck with one game. So they are looking for a service which essentially they can use and then can change the game. So I think that's the market would develop, and very interestingly, coming back to your second point, how do we see difference between developed and developing markets? In developing markets, most of the people have enough money to basically invest on the consoles, and they are doing it. And what we have been seeing, it's countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia. That's the countries which are really gapping up and picking up the cloud gaming. So if you see the growth of cloud gaming, while the cloud gaming started in, let's say, Switzerland, US, Germany, and we launched the service just before the COVID in telecom and telemobile. But I think the bulk of the customers are coming from Southeast Asia, where the cloud infrastructure is not so good. So I think that's how we currently see.
Very interesting points you made, Anuj. How do you think, will gamers actually move from just, today I only access games. Will gamers move from accessing games to owning games? Will we see a YouTubeization of the gaming industry as well?
There will be multiple set of business rules. So cloud gaming would not come with one single business rule. One of the biggest business rule, as you correctly said, would be like the Netflix of the gaming industry, where you actually have subscribed to one service and you get a curated set of games which essentially customers can play. But there'll still be users who would like to play their own games which are not there. So that would be the second set of service, which you call it a infrastructure as a service. So you basically hire a console on a cloud. So you still want to play your own game. Let's say if I want to play FIFA, but I don't want to invest on a cloud or buy the PS4 or Xbox. So I would basically then do infrastructure as a service kind of thing, where I'll basically fire up it will be much easier for the customer, but technically we'll be firing up a VM onto the cloud, and then people can bring their own game via Steam or Ubisoft and they start playing it. So that would be the another set of models. So both models would exist. Yeah.
Understood. Let me turn to you, Rashim. So games on mobile devices are even more sensitive to latency, right? Internet connection problems, because if the connection is interrupted even for a millisecond, that will impact the whole gaming experience. So let me ask the guru from the telco, what will 5G do to this industry?
Hi.
Yeah.
So I would see the gaming industry is growing, is one of the biggest industry which is growing fastest. And cloud gaming would be the frontier for that. Now to enable cloud gaming, 5G would be the catalyst and the enabler. 5G provides almost 10x more speed. It provides ultra low latency. With the new releases coming up, it will give us latency as low as 2 to 3 milliseconds. And the third big catalyst would be edge data centers. So in India, with 4G, almost 40 to 50 data centers operators have already built. It gives you latency around 10 milliseconds, and with gaming kind of applications, AR, VR, metaverse kind of applications, these data centers have to scale, which would reduce the latency further. So I am seeing personally that between 3 to 5 millisecond kind of a latency in future, most of the 5G networks would be able to deliver with the new features coming from the radio side and decentralization of the edge cloud.
And what do you think this would mean to the kinds of games that can now be played over cloud? How do you see this whole concept of gaming change as a result of 5G?
So it will have advantages both for the developers. The developers will get more freedom because right now they have to procure the hardware or the storage or a proprietary hardware, and there are piracy issues. So they will get more freedom. They will be able to develop games on the fly because at least the hardware and storage will not be a bottleneck. For the players, it will give them opportunity to all new host of services with the AR and AR VR experience. And right now they are not able to feature a lot of services because the limitation of the devices. Those limitations of consoles and devices would go. With this, the cloud gaming has to scale because it gives more freedom and more and better experience.
Sure, sure. So on AR VR, let me turn to you, Anuj. So AR VR generated, I think, revenue of US dollars 12 billion in 2020, projected to increase to 72 billion, 6 times in 2024. If I look at the AR VR industry, really 80% of the revenue today is contributed by the gaming industry. How do you see this trend? Now globally, while there's a significant use of AR VR, how do you see this trend evolve in India? And what do you believe are the key challenges that you foresee in adoption of these technologies in gaming in India?
Very interesting on the AR VR. So I think as any new technology comes up, obviously the first users are the casual users to basically get before the technology starts becoming more mature. So you are right, 80% of the current users in AR, VR and even part of MR also are coming from gamers. But I think eventually as the market is maturing and the more applications are coming up, there will be more interesting applications which will be taking over. So gaming might not be the lead front of that part. But the way we see it, with 5G coming in, edge cloud coming up, AR, VR would actually make it much simpler. You don't need to carry those heavy headsets on your thing because the processing is being done outside the device. So it will be much cheaper, it will be much easier, economically accessible, and I think easy to own. The gamers, there will be again different set of gamers who would be AR, VR. So one of the things which we know is happening in other countries is that they'll, instead of having your big theme parks, you will have a small room with will be every rides would be AR or VR, right? So you might have whole Disneyland in a one small room and people can still enjoy. So that's what's happening, and that would be enabled by 5G because 5G would be able to create a private slice for the users for that particular as an enterprise customer, and Edge would be able to deliver the service. So that would be the one biggest use case which we are seeing happening at the part. The AR users might be the one who would still I'll classify as a casual user because again, I don't know if you have experienced it, but it's not very convenient to play the games with maximum 1 or 2 hours because I think half an hour you get is slightly inconvenient. So it would be habitual users just for the niche of it. But yeah, AR, VR, I think these theme parks and these small saloons kind of thing which are coming up, something what used to have those Mario time games where you have video PC thing, similar thing I think which is going to happen with 5G and Edge thing coming up.
So the session hall 2 in Pragati Maidan can become Disneyland Hong Kong.
Much smaller actually. I think one of the hall 1 and hall 2 itself can give you the same experience because all the movement would happen in your head, right? You don't need to physically move. You don't need those big machines to maintain it. You just get a headset. Only thing you have to ensure that the network is stable and the customer experience doesn't get impacted. Otherwise they could get dizzy. That would be difficult.
And in the context of India, what do you see as the key challenges in adoption of AR/VR, specifically in the context of India? Do you see us as a unique market? Do you see us growing like globally AR/VR is growing? How do you see this in the context of India?
So I'll say India is a very unique position. It's because of the sheer size of the country we have high-end, we have users who are high-end developing market users, we have people who are very underdeveloped kind of market users. So the spectrum of, and just to take that back, so AR/VR I think would start from obviously from the cities, big cities would take it up for the niche of having this thing, and gaming would be one of the use cases. I think industries would take it up big way with the edge, and again 5G coming up, you might need. So we are just working on a system where if you are building up a house, you just go and project your whole house onto the piece of land, and you can actually see how the house would look like, and you can rotate it out that part. So I think that those are the kind of use cases which we are seeing happening there. But again, in India market, the cities would take it up first faster. I think what we see kids in the other cities and the part, they might be for a niche of it happening to it. Education would be the other thing will take it up, but yeah, that's
Rashim, you have a point of view on this?
I would say the affordability will play a key role in this. As we decentralize and as the games goes more closer to the users, the scale would be there. And once the scale comes, the prices would go down and the affordability will come into the picture.
Got it. So one of the things that one often wonders is the high budget titles, the games themselves are getting more demanding with their graphics and system requirements. Now with 5G coming in, the network will be able to, let's say, cater to the higher graphics requirements or whatever that is needed. But what do you think will happen at the device end, especially in the context of India, because India is a mobile first gaming market. So in that context, how do you predict how cloud gaming converges with development of devices?
I think 5G, the basic role of 5G, if you see, would be the low latency part, because for the gaming, you don't need very high bandwidth. So low latency is the most critical part in 5G that we use. Other part which you were saying about what will happen, eventually with the 5G and the edge compute coming up, you would get the storage and the processing out of the device, which would mean that you don't need to upgrade from PS2 to 4, 3 other things, right? Same with the Xbox thing. Because currently, why do you upgrade is that either you run out of the memory, which is the storage, because you download the game, or you have run out of the processing power. Both those things would go into the cloud with the 5G getting enabled, so which means that I can still use my old phone to stream the latest game. Now coming back to the AAA games, yes, there will be different set of games which could be used on your mobile, but most of the AAA titles currently are meant for basically keyboard and other part for the time being. But I think as India market emerges up, there will be different titles coming up which you can still play with 8 or 9 buttons, which you currently have on the console. So that would be the very big change for the game developers. They will be doing it.
So the two things I'm taking away are this hall will become Disneyland Hong Kong, and this device will become the most complicated PC on which I can play all my AAA games. Is this right? Is this what you said?
I'll not say it will be difficult. Only thing is that it will be more accessible to play all the games. Yeah, so I think you might experimenting more. You might stop playing Candy Crush and you start playing something like FIFA on your phone. So it depends, because you currently don't pay because you think it's very costly to pay, right? I think so that's a market would get developed, that people like us who might have time but don't want to invest money would be the one I think the market would start developing.
So if the whole world of gaming is becoming so exciting, I have one fundamental question which I'll put to both of you. What do you think will be the revenue model for the various parties involved in this gaming ecosystem? The developer, the telco, which is providing the connection with low latency, 5G, etc. And how do you think we will hook more and more people onto gaming? So what do you think is the model for all elements of this ecosystem going forward? And either of you can start by taking a guess.
So there would be, I think this model has to evolve. Obviously, it can't be a consumption-related model. Right now, the model is consumption-related. We give a 2 GB pack and whatever they want to consume, whether gaming or not. So this would be more related to the experience. If the experience of the game is better by virtue of 5G and by virtue of edge cloud, then it has to be a different model with a related to the experience, which would be both latency and speed.
So I totally agree what Rashim is saying, that obviously the model with the gaming thing, you can't expect the customer to pay for the data separately. So idea to be subscription kind of a model where you would allow the customer, very similar to, let's say, crudely saying Netflix of a gaming kind of a service. So the customer pays one time, but then he gets the kind of titles which he was not getting onto the Play Stores or App Store right now available. So he gets the high-end graphic games, and he get access to all the games, and then he doesn't need to get a bill shock, because I think all of us have heard those interesting stories of people paying 6 lakh rupees, 7 lakh rupees on Roblox and PUBG kind of thing, right? So that thing obviously with cloud gaming, with the telco offering of the service would get solved, because telco would ensure, depending on the model working out, that the money what we are getting, because currently the gamers are making money from the ads or basically selling in-app purchase. But when it's a subscription model, it will be much easier for gamers or developers to make money, because they will have single source, would be telco, who will be collecting the money and they'll be doing a fair distribution. So I think market would be much more stable.
So in a sense, you think this model will be a media type model?
It would be one set of the market.
Media type revenue model for gaming?
Yeah, everybody
makes
basically takes slice of the cake and basically keeps it with them. Yeah, that would be the model. You don't need to, because otherwise the current model which is there, it's very complex, and that's why it's not scaling up. Not everybody buys PS4, not everybody buy the titles, right? The same thing.
And what happens to the device manufacturer? How does he get his revenue? And does he have, can Apple do something where Apple also starts to generate disparate revenues because of cloud gaming picking up?
So again, I'll just add to for whatever we are seeing it. A device, there'll be different set of devices that are coming up. So I think currently we only see these mobiles. In the same stores, you start seeing those gamepad controllers coming up, right? Where you actually can stream the video. Something very similar to, let's say, Steam Deck. Steam Deck is something that you have to download the game, but attached to it. But now I think the other thing is that you can now slip your phone into those controllers and start doing something like Nintendo Switch kind of thing. So game devices would not change. Only thing currently, if you see all the mobile person who's launching a mobile, the first thing they show you is the new set of game, NFC, another part, right? So that would be a new set that they will start showing you high-end traffic games on the same set of devices.
I will just add to this. On device side, I would say the operating system guys like Android will also play a big role. Like Google has launched their own game, which is the Google Stadia.
Yes.
Right now it is not launched in India because the latency requirements are very, very less. It may come with 5G. So Google and iOS, Chrome, Google and iOS would have their say, and they would come up with their own games. Similarly, hyperscalers want to enter this, like Microsoft is entering. So hyperscaler will also have a play with their edge cloud solution or a hyperscale solution. They will also like to host and roll out their games. So everybody wants to enter this market. What will the revenue model, that time will tell, but everybody wants to have some say in this pie.
Okay, let me now turn to some, so we discussed all the positives. We discussed how we will experience Disneyland sitting in this hall. Let me turn to a very sensitive issue now. What do you think are the issues that we face as a society first and industry later with respect to data security and privacy in the context of cloud gaming?
I would say gaming has to come under the ambit of cyber security. Recently, if you see, lot of vulnerabilities are coming even in the platform which are big gamers. And there have been cases where there have been data leaks of the customer, there have been even the wallet leaks. I was reading a study which was saying around 10% of the accounts created on the gaming sites are frauds. So this has to come under the ambit of cyber security. I would say there has to be at least 3 big priorities. There has to be a multi-level authentication so that the data thefts and the wallet thefts can be avoided. The security has to be embedded in the complete life cycle of the game, starting from the campaign, marketing, and when the person is playing the game, it has to be embedded in the entire life cycle. And I've seen a lot of phishing allowed within the game. Those should be totally banned and avoided. And there has to be a complete framework of cyber security and regulation framework which should be made for the cyber security of gaming.
Cyber security is interesting. You mentioned regulatory framework. What kind of regulatory framework do you envisage?
I think at least there has to be a framework on limits that if the game which requires a financial exposure there has to be a day limit or there has to be a monthly limit so that the accounts are not theft. There has to be strict KYCs, both in terms of age and the person identities. This is what is coming on top of my mind.
Got it. Anuj, do you have a point of view on this?
No, I think just to add to what Rashim is talking about, gamers are slightly different from the normal people because these are generally who are youth of, so they are not very conversant about all those things, and I think security has an issue, but I think once the telcos start getting into, because currently if you see all the issues are coming up because it's a pretty unregulated market, right? Anybody is launching the service, all the Chinese companies are coming up, they are launching those card games and making money, and then government are putting up the stops to them. I think once the large telcos start getting into this market, it will automatically get regularized because then you don't have those fly-by-night players coming up and you don't know where the money is going, because the money, again, essentially the money would flow to the known people, I think. So that would automatically regularize it. You don't need very high security because it's not something you have a very personal data getting stored there on the games. You are not sharing your username, password. I think that would, any telco would take care of it. So I'll say it will be slightly different from the not very stringent like KYC, but hopefully it should be easier.
Got it. So we are almost out of time. Last question to both of you. 30 seconds each. What would be your conclusion? What would be the concluding message you will give to all of us in terms of where do you predict gaming to be 5 years from now? So 5G is coming. I don't know in 5 years whether there will be 6G or not. The minister spoke about it yesterday. Where do you think gaming will be, and how pervasive will be the impact of gaming on the society? 30 seconds each, your concluding remarks. Let's start with you, Rashim.
Yeah, I would say 5 years from now, right now one of the biggest application on the retail side is mobile broadband, and fixed broadband would start on the 5G side. Next 5 years, 5G would be one of the major revenue stream for any of the mobile operators, as it will not only provide you mobile gaming, cloud gaming, it will also provide gaming as streaming, which right now video is streaming, it will give gaming as streaming. For the developers, it will provide more security, so the piracy kind of things would not be there. And there will be a big business where inside the game, mobile ads based on the customer personalization would become reality, because now it is sitting on the cloud.
And to you, Anuj.
What we see right now, if you talk about the revenue in the gaming industry, is typically coming from selling the hardware or selling the piece of plastic, which is the DVD. What we understand going forward, the revenue model would change drastically. You will see a lot of people basically paying the money to basically use the game or use the console on the cloud. So that would be the big change. It will be more from the CAPEX model become an OPEX model or use as models. I think that would be the big change what we predict right now.
So what I hear is, and the way I summarize it is 3 sentences. He said gamers are not normal people. My prediction is 5 years from now, all of us normal people will also become gamers. So that's prediction 1. 2, I will borrow from him. I really like the fact that he said this hall will become Disneyland Hong Kong. I don't have to take my children to Hong Kong on an expensive flight. Next Indian Mobile Congress, I just get them to Pragati Maidan session hall number 2, and that is Disneyland. And the third thing is, there's lots of money to be made for the telcos, for the developers, and who knows if YouTubeization happens even for the gamers themselves. Thank you very much for a very enlightening session. Thank you, Rashim. Thank you, Anuj.